Okay, we're going to take a look now at actually running some imports using TrackEd 3. And I've opened up a blank TrackEd file just like if I'd first received it. It's loaded straight to the import page where I get to choose between my primary or secondary areas. Obviously for most schools that's a pretty easy decision. For P to 12 colleges, P to 10 high tops, you'll want to make sure that you separate your primary and your secondary imports, at least for the results imports, because primary works in semesters and secondary works in terms. But apart from that, you can actually combine your files together. Okay, so today I'm going to choose secondary and I'm going to be working through just adding a year 12 cohort to the system. Normally when you're doing this, you would import all of your cohorts at once. So for a high school, that would be year 7 through to 12. For a primary school, prep through to year 6. But in this case, I'll just be doing one cohort here. So I'm going to choose the student summary import. That's the first and most important import in TrackEd. That's the one that's actually going to create new students in your system. And it's also going to update their cohorts, their role classes, their absence and behaviour information. And it'll also automatically archive students who have left. So for that reason, it's actually done quite regularly by most schools, somewhere between monthly and weekly. You would want to do the student summary import. Okay, so it's asking me here to drop the file. Now, how do I go about doing that? You could click the import guide button, or you can load up our import guide PDF, and that's normally the best way to do it. You can check here how old that PDF file is. If you'd like to download the most recent one, you can go to our support website, support.trackedapp.com.au, search for import guide, and the most recent one will always be there. But if we've just sent you the app, you will have the most recent import guide. Okay, so this front page is a table of contents for the imports. It shows you all of the imports that are available in TrackEd. And today we're just going to be doing the main four. So student summary, NAPLAN summary, student results, and student photos. And with those four imported, we'll have a lot of data in TrackEd. And you can then decide what other imports you're wanting to do, what's going to suit your school's context, and add to that over time. We've got other videos in our process management section, which just help with working that process through. Okay, so I'll scroll down here and we'll have a look at an example. This is the student summary import example. We have some import notes. We have the steps to take in one school, and we're not able to demonstrate that part of this today, but just follow those steps through. And importantly, make sure you do the right format. So when you're saving it, follow those steps for importing the right format. Okay, so you'll want to prepare all of your import files. You might want to work through and get that done ahead of time. Save those into a folder ready to import into TrackEd, and I've done that here, just an example. In some school contexts, they'll actually have an admin officer who'll go ahead and do that. Some of the import types out of one school will need a certain access level, but apart from that, they can prepare the import data ready for you to drop the files in. Okay, so the next section here is in TrackEd, and we're going to show you or demonstrate this to you now through this import video. Okay, so there's two ways to drop the file in. You can either right-click and insert file, and that'll just use your file browser. You can go find your file, click on it, and it'll drop it into that box. The other way is to have both the folder and TrackEd open at the same time, and you can just drag and drop across. Okay, so I've only got the one student summary file just for my year 12s, but if you wanted to do year 7 to 12, you'd have 6 files here dropped in a row. If you were doing primary school, prep to year 6, you would have 7 files dropped into a row there. So now I'll press my import. Do you want to import the student summary? It's important to just check that dialog, make sure I've chosen the right import type. Okay, it's going to now check if I've done a backup, and because I haven't done one in the last hour, it'll run a backup now. If you're running on FileMaker server, it'll skip that step. Okay, it lands now on the import review page, and this is actually an important page to check. Just make sure the columns line up with the data that you've got underneath here. And as I scroll across, you can see the absences and behaviour line up under the right columns. Okay, so that's an important step. It does two things. It makes sure I've chosen the right file, It also makes sure I've chosen the right import type. So once you've checked that, just press the import button. It'll go ahead and run that import and then land me back on the home page. In my case, it'll show me my year 12 cohort. If you've done multiple cohorts, they'll all appear there at that point in time. So as I click on my year 12s, you can see it's just imported that basic set of data. I've got 30 students in year 12. And if I go to the latest results, it also has English, Maths, Science results for the last 3 semesters. And so that's all we've got so far. We'll press ahead and we'll go to the next import type. So I'll choose secondary, I'll choose the NAPLAN summary import, and I've got a NAPLAN summary file here, and I've just got their year 9 file, but you might like to import a history, their year 3, year 5, year 7, year 9 files. For these guys, they're in year 12, so 2015, they were in year 9, and I can put in an import note. That's an optional step, and it just helps on the import log to show where you're up to and what you've done so far. So I'll choose import. Are you sure you want to do the NAPLAN import? Yes. It's saying I've done a backup in the last hour. Would I like to run another? No thanks. And it gives me that review page again where I can check that the columns line up. And then I press import. It'll begin processing that data now. Some of our imports will take a little bit longer than others. Especially if you're doing multiple files, especially if you've got really large schools. I'll just wait for this one to complete. And here we have, congratulations, your import's successful. Please review the records to be sure. So I'm going to open up my year 12s, and I have here Will Bailey, and if I look down here, I've got a year 9 result. So he was band 10s all the way through, and I can click through a couple of students to see that. Okay, so the next import we're going to do will be the secondary. It will be the student results import. Now this is showing an important message. We do that for some of our imports. This is one of the common ones that people get wrong. Make sure you import from your oldest results data to your most recent. So it's a good thing to have a history of results data in the system. You can see just in one place that history really easily in TrackEd. But yeah, make sure if you want 3 years of history, you go back and grab that oldest file first and work through to the most recent file. So on our import guide on the internet, we actually have things like this where you can have a look at. So assuming we're starting our imports in the middle of 2019, as you're preparing each of these import files, you can see which year level you're wanting to select along with that. So for any 2019 data, you'll want to choose all of your year levels. For last year's data, you'll skip the year 12s because they're no longer at the school, you're not really caring about that. And then going back 2 years ago, you'll skip the year 11s and 12s. So you're just selecting year 7, 8, 9 and 10 when you're preparing that file. Now again, secondary schools will work in terms. And primary schools will work in semesters. Now, if your school doesn't do certain interim reporting periods, so for example, term 3, you can just skip it and it just comes up as a blank column in TrackEd, and that's nothing to worry about. Okay, so this guide is just set up here in case you are doing all 4 terms. Okay, so that's a useful import guide step, but I've gone ahead and I've done that. I've prepared just 2 years of data in my case, and I'm wanting to drop this data in to the system. And I'm going to do the multi-file import here. So I'm putting in my 2017 data first from each term through to term 4. And then I go for my 2018 data. And it's actually mining the academic year and the term out of the file name here. But I'll show you an example of when that doesn't work. It doesn't always work, and sometimes you need to select those. So this last one, 2018, it couldn't pick up the term from this one. So you actually just click in here, choose the term. For each of these, you have to make sure that the academic year and term is set, and that's when the data was from, not what the current academic year and term is. Okay, so I've got my 8 files in there. That's from oldest to newest. And when I choose the import button, are you sure? Okay. No backup, please. Now, with the review pages, it's actually going to review each of the files. So again, it's an important step just to make sure that the columns line up with the data, and that just makes sure you've chosen the right import file. So I'm skipping through here. And I've done all 8 of my import files. Now it's going to go through and process this data. This is, again, one of the slower imports. It will jump around a couple of goes at a time, but it's an import that you don't do all that often. And especially you're not doing a whole school's worth of data for 3 years all that often. So just let that one run its course, and we'll pick that up again soon. And our import's successful. So we'll go back to the home page. Okay, we're back on the home page now, and we'll choose our Year 12s. And we'll have a look now. We've got Year 11 and 12 data for those. I'll click through a couple of students just to show you what that looks like. And we're going to go ahead now and import the student photos. So this is a pretty quick and easy import. I go back to the import page, choose my area, but again, you can do a whole school at once if you're a Peter 12 college for this particular import. I'll choose student photos, and I can put in an import note if I want to, but I'm just going to choose import, and all I'm going to do is just navigate to the right folder that contains all of my student photos. So that could be on a CD, could be on a network drive, whatever it is. You just point TrackEd to the folder that all of the photos are in, choose. Congratulations, that's now successful. And if I go here, it'll show you the student photos for those students that I've imported. Okay, so again, we've just done those first 4 imports, the student summary, the NAPLAN summary, the student results, and we've done 2 years of history in this case, and we've done the photos import. And you can see on this profile, it's actually populated quite a lot of information. But again, you can have a look at the other things that it hasn't populated for Year 11 and 12, maybe SLIMS, QCE information, maybe OP data. You might want to bring in the attendance data, and that could be the weekly attendance file or the absence list from one school. We have things like extracurricular. We have behaviour incidents, both positive and negative. We have tracking template sections here where you can import data for diagnostics. So lots of other options are available. You can decide what fits your school, what works well for you, and happy importing.